You're listening to Off the X with your hosts Tyler Wells, Forrest Carvajal, and Barrett Moon. Brought to you by Pond Creek Duck Calls. Call with confidence. High and Dry Utility Poles. Rixie Outdoors, changing the world of dog stands. Hunt Proof, the premier waterfowl mobile app. Brown Water Leather Lanyards. And Wellens Land, Arkansas's leading recreational real estate and development firm.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Off the X podcast. I'm Forrest Carvajal, and I'm here with my best good friends. Actually, we're missing one.
You made it.
Senior...
I made the list. You made the list.
Did make the list. But Senior Short Shot, Tyler Wells, is not here. To my left, the Bourbon Boy, Barrett Moon, is here. And to my right, the maestro of media, Matt Covington, is here.
What's up? The nicknames abound right now.
And we have a legend on Zoom tonight. He may not think of himself as a legend, but I do because I've watched so many episodes of RNTV that he's definitely a legend in my world. Mr. ShawnStahl, how are you, sir?
Well, pretty good. I ain't much of a legend here. I got my dang headphones.
You got a kink in your headphones over there.
A knot out of his.
Kinking something.
Oh man! Well, thank you for hopping on with us tonight. I'm really excited about this because anytime that I have ever watched you on RNTV or any of the episodes that I've ever seen you in on TV, I'm not a goose hunter, but you made it interesting because of how you would dissect the hunts. So I'm really excited about this tonight. But go ahead and give the listeners a little bit of where you're from, kind of how you got into hunting.
Well, I grew up, born and raised Southwest Michigan. I probably migrated maybe 15 miles from where I was born and raised. So I haven't went too far, but I've got to travel quite a bit in hunting. And I got into hunting kind of like anybody else. It was a family deal. My grandpa, got me into the outdoors, fishing, hunting. I always joke around about, he probably taught me, I learned all the wrong things to do before I learned how to do it the right way, because he was a bit of an outlaw. But at the age, I didn't know that, you're just a young kid. You just think that's the way it's supposed to be. And then you're like, well, Grandpa, holding the spotlight isn't probably something you should be doing, but I've come a long ways. I promise you that. Yeah. But no, that's so just got into hunting that way and been just love the outdoors ever since, man. It's just a cool place, whether it's fishing or hunting, turkey hunting, deer hunting, duck hunting, squirrel, rabbit. I did a lot of rabbit hunting growing up, but just the outdoors in general. It's a cool place to find your center, man. The world gets spinning in all different directions and different ways, and you just go get outside and park up next to a tree or in a duck blind, and everything seems to come back to normal. So,
well, what kind of hunting came first? Because you named a lot of them there.
I probably did. Road hunting was probably the first thing my grandpa. But when I officially started hunting at 12, I did a lot of rabbit hunting. You were only, at the time here in Michigan, you were only allowed to small game hunt. And I think the way my birthday fell, I just had a few weeks of rabbit season left when I turned 12 there. So rabbit hunted a lot, man. I chased beagles for a long time growing up. My grandpa it seemed like every weekend I'd go to their house, he'd have a different beagle. And then towards the end of the season, you'd start seeing the same ones back in the kennel. And I probably spent more time chasing beagles that were chasing deer than we actually chased rabbits. But I did a lot of rabbit hunting growing up. Chased squirrels, pheasants, and then 14. Got to be 14. Started deer hunting. Shot a deer that first year. Shot a doe, and I decided that. My dad said, "Hey, man, the freezer's full. We don't need any more. We're done. And you can still shoot more, but freezer's full." And I still wanted to hunt. And I said, "What else is open?" And pulled out the regulations, and waterfowl is still open. So he pulled out some old duck decoys, some old paper mache ones out of the rafters. Went and bought my duck stamp that afternoon, and away I went with me and my lab and Springer, and we went did a little solo hunt, the dogs and I, down on the pond. And he's kind of funny. You turn a 14-year-old loose with a gun in the woods, but that was the times back then. And I went down there and shot a pair of green-winged teal on the water, and from then on, I've been hooked ever since.
You had to have a stamp at 14 back then?
Yeah. Well, you had to have a waterfowl, a state one. Yeah.
Really?
I don't think. Yeah. You had to have a state duck stamp here. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all do the point system? Did you go through that up there like we had down here?
Yeah, we did. When I first started, it was right when it was the point system on ducks, and it was also you could shoot lead in certain counties, but not in others. It was during the transition period when they did it in Michigan, at least by the estimated harvest for those counties, and those were the highest counties transition first. So in the county I lived in, you could still shoot lead. In the county that was just 5 miles away, you had to shoot steels. So I kind of caught that transition period. I just found it, but at the time, I just found it easier just to straight up shoot steel shot, because if that's the way you're going to have to go, and if you're going to hunt in both, you might as well just have the right one on you. So I'm better at following rules than trying to break them. So
You learned that early.
Yeah. Well, from hunting my grandpa, that's for dang sure. Yeah.
Well, down here, I hear stories when I go to DeWitt, which is where we do family hunts once or twice a year, and they tell me,
wait a minute, time out. How do you say? Is it DeWitt or DeWitt?
I say DeWitt.
Is it?
I've always said DeWitt.
See, that's. Well, you get farther up in Arco County, it's probably DeWitt.
I don't pronounce many words correctly, so I just say it how I'm going to say it.
They say DeWitt and heavy on the D. I don't know why, but that's just what they do.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like hurricane, WMA. Everybody here calls it hurricane, but when you talk about a hurricane, you call it a hurricane. So I've never understood that one, but I say it the way they say it up here because I don't want to sound weird.
Ketchup, catsup, right?
Exactly.
But anyhow, they talk about during the point system, pintails were 10 points apiece. So you could shoot 10 of those things back then. And I'm like, man, I've shot 2 of those in my entire life. I can't imagine trying to shoot 10 of them. But back then, apparently, it was fairly easy.
Well, yeah, they say it was, but from where I'm at, I've never seen a pintail around here. Back then, when they were 10 points, now you see them when they're one bird, you know.
Well, at what point did you get onto goose hunting?
Probably later on that year. There's a refuge here by the house. It's only 10 miles west of me right here. And at the time, it was like one of the only places around you could actually shoot geese. And we had a weird duck split, and duck season was closed, but the managed goose area was open, and they held 25,000 geese over there. And it was just a crazy time when, goose hunting was just starting to pick up. And it was one of the only places you could hunt. And you could drive. I remember driving over there as a kid and seeing them before I even goose hunted. And you could just sit there and park alongside the road and see thousands of them. But so I was always enamored by that. But they had a public, it's public hunting basically on a land refuge, and then they have another area where you could draw into, and you basically stood in the woods and pass shot at the birds. So my actual first goose hunt, we went over and put in for the draw. Got a horrible draw, didn't even get a reissue number, and we went to the second row of blinds in the woods and pass shot. And I mean, I saw thousands and thousands, which I thought at the time, at 14, I thought it was thousands and thousands. It may have only been a couple thousand, but flying over my head and just honking and making noise. And I kind of knew then, I mean, I like to hunt and I like to fish, but something just rang right there that waterfowl was it. And I just grew up in a time when the Canada goose hunting was taking off. We had ducks around, but we raised ducks in Michigan, but they don't usually stick around long. We've got wood ducks and blue-wing teal and mallards and that stuff. And once they get shot off or pushed off, then it's just the geese that we chase after. So I started hunting public right then when I was 14. And my dad, I was fortunate. He had some friends that were really into it and had all the gear, and I could jump in with them. I had a buddy at school that I went to school with. Him and his dad were into it, so they'd pick me up on Saturday mornings at 4:30 in the morning, Saturday and Sunday morning at 4:30 in the morning, and we'd run over for the draw at 5:30 and try to get us a spot. So,
were y'all running decoy spreads back then, like what we run now?
Yeah, we actually used decoys. Yeah. Out in the grass hay field, had some corn blinds or standing corn, and what's weird is that, if I take people by this place and show them, it's great. It's hard to grasp and comprehend, even in today's world of how we hunt. But, it's a 1 mile by 1 mile square refuge, and it's split by a main road. And then there's a road on the north and the south and on the east and west sides. But there's basically zones. And in each zone, which is one field, there could be anywhere from 8 to 11 different groups of hunters in it. And it's about roughly about 3/8 of a mile long. These fields are, yeah. So it's highly competitive.
It's like Arkansas public land.
Yeah, he started out.
Pretty close. That's how So that's how you learn. It was, looking back on it. I'm glad I had it. It was very competitive. So it taught you to think outside the box, try to be better every day, and try to outfox not only the birds but the other hunters, and where they were going to go, where they're going to set up, how they were going to set up, and how you were going to set up, and try to get the birds to come to you and not them. So I attribute that to a lot of my early learning experiences in the field was, hunting public.
Go ahead.
Were y'all running, what size spreads were y'all running back then? Is it anything like we're doing today?
Well, so at the time, my very first decoy spread, I had a car when I turned 16. I didn't have a truck. So whatever I could get in the back seat of my Cutlass and in the trunk, that's what I ran, Jack.
Yeah, that Cutlass.
But yeah, and I did put a dang trailer hitch on that thing, and I had when I was turned 12 years old, my grandpa got me a 12-foot flat bottom and a Johnson 2.5. You can't see it; it's over there in the corner, but Johnson 2.5 horsepower motor. So I'd take that boat, I had it on a trailer, had a bumper hitch on that Cutlass, and I'd fill that thing up with goose decoys. And so I'd have my back seat, the boat, and my trunk full of decoys all fall.
You wanted it,
but I typically.
It.
Oh heck yeah, man! You did what you had to do, right? But so I 16, 17 years old, I'd be out with a girlfriend Friday night late, then I'd be up at 4:30 in the morning, be over there, make that draw with everybody, and do it all over again Saturday and Monday morning. I'd be a walking zombie at basketball practice. But my spread back then. So I had these probably don't ring a bell to any of you guys, but Kerry Light used to make an Aquabat Canada Goose decoy. It just had a suction bottom. I had a dozen or 18 of those. I had a couple dozen of them Kerry Light. They were shell decoys, but they looked like a full body. It had a metal spreader bar in there. My dad worked at GM, and they get these wooden boxes would come in on pallets, and they'd tear them apart and be able to take the plywood home. So I took that plywood and I make silhouettes out of them. And I had 56 silhouettes that I made out of like 3/4 inch plywood, 5/8 inch plywood. And they were heavy things, but I hand painted them, did all that. So I had a bunch of those that I used for decoys. It's basically a yard sale spread. Anything I could get my hands on at the time. We really didn't. Back then you had Bigfoot decoys, but that was about it. Didn't have, and shell decoys were real popular back in even like the big 48-inch Super Mag shells. I still got some in the barn. I still got some of the original silhouette decoys that I made back in the day.
Nice.
But
awesome.
That was a typical spread. So, and nobody really had decoy trailers back then. It just wasn't a thing. And I think it was about 1997. I was in my late 20s by then. And, I bought a 6x12 cargo trailer tandem axle. Nobody had one there. I come pulling in with that thing. Everybody's like, "What in the heck are you doing? Why are you doing this?"
Was it
and there were
still attached to the Cutlass?
No, by then I had a Blazer. I pulled that sucker around with. Got rid of the Cutlass, but so there were a couple. There's an outfitter there, Best Chance Charters. They had a couple like 4x8 boxes that they put on boat trailers that they made, and they used those. And there's another guy, Goose Busters, Dwayne, and them had one similar to that. But that was it for trailers in 1997. Now, if you go over there, there's probably only 3,000 to 8,000 geese there at peak times. But everybody that pulls in that parking lot has a cargo trailer, and some groups have 2 or 3 of them with them. So, they're putting out hundreds and hundreds of decoys.
So I'm curious. I'm not a big Canada Goose person, but I do listen when people talk about them, and that southern Illinois area used to be like, I guess, the hot spot for Canada geese or whatever, and they don't really shoot them there anymore.
Right.
Are Canada geese, is it like they're not migrating, or is it because they become so residential easily?
It's a product of a lot of different things, and they blame it on. I say they. I shouldn't generalize them, but a lot of people blame no-till farming and all this and that. But bottom line, it comes down to two things. It comes down to pressure. It's a reaction to pressure, and also they become urbanized. Even as the resident Canada goose population exploded, all these birds are sitting in city parks and in lagoons and lakes and golf courses and all that. And when you do have these MVP and James Bay birds, Eastern Prairie, all those population of birds that would migrate from the tundra and come down, well, they're seeing all these little refuges. They used to fly direct to Horicon Marsh or direct to the Fenville Farm Unit by me, or direct to like Lac La Paro in Southwest Minnesota, and then move down to Swan Lake in Missouri and Southern Illinois, those traditional areas. You just make big hops. Now they make little skips all the way down, and some stop, a few stop here and a few stop here. Next thing you know, there isn't enough to go around at any other place. And it's also a reaction to pressure. You can't continuously shoot at birds, hunt after hunt after hunt. The refuge here by my house, it used to hold 25 to 40,000 birds at peak, and that peak was end of October to first half of November. Now peak is late in January when everything else is froze up and standing corn over there, and we got 3 foot of snow on the ground, and they're over there feeding. That's when they're peaking. So it's a pressure deal. Same with Southern Illinois. That every field down there that a goose could potentially land in and feed on outside of the refuge had a goose pit or a spread in it. So it doesn't take much to, if they're going to survive, they're going to go where you're not hunting them. So it's a combination of both, in my opinion.
I didn't mean to make it sound like just one thing. We hunters, all of us do that a lot, but I don't understand the Canada geese, and from my basic point of view, I do notice that the resident birds, that population just grows and grows and grows every year. And I was curious where people like you actually saw migrators, which in Arkansas, I assume back in the day we got migrators, but it wasn't during my lifetime very much.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, but nowadays,
Arkansas at one point in northern Louisiana was the wintering ground for the MVP birds that would come out of like up by Churchill and up there in Hudson Bay. They used to go all the way down into Louisiana and Arkansas. Then eventually they moved up into southern Illinois, and then now they're just spread all over from Horicon, Wisconsin, down to I-70 in that area.
So then the next question would be,
which has created it's created a boom, really. I mean, you never, when I was a kid, there was only a couple of places you could go to shoot a Canada goose. Now, I mean, you just walk out your front door, no matter where you're at. I don't care if you're in Florida or Fargo, North Dakota, there's geese somewhere close to you, and that never used to be the case.
That's true. But what I was thinking about is the duck populations. And Louisiana used to get a lot more mallards, and they're seeing less mallards, and people talk about flyways shifting and all this other stuff. Do you think that that's something similar with the ducks? It's just a longer progression?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, let's just face it. I mean, look in the mirror. You look different than you did 10 years ago, right? I do too.
No, of course not.
Everything,
I look exactly the same.
Fortunately, but unfortunately, everything changes through time. And the only thing that you can count on to remain constant is change. Everything's going to change throughout. And it's just, as hunters, we got to be prepared to react and do things. I'm not a big climate change advocate, green this, green that. But, if you look at throughout history, the climate has changed. We went through ice ages, we went through hot spells and da-da-da. So it just, stuff changes, the world changes. And the birds react to it. They want simple things, man. They just like us. They want peace, happiness, and love. They want to be able to raise a family. And that's, they want to propagate and get to the next generation. That's what they're going to do. And That's where they find, it's just simple. They just go out and find those places they can find their little niche and survive. And if it's moving, 100 miles or 500 miles, they're going to do it.
I really like that perspective. His perspective is not settling on like the present. His is
Right.
like the next step. I love that. That's a
Yeah.
learning moment for me, and I had to say it to make sure I got it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hunting in general. I mean, you're not like when I'm looking at places I'm going to hunt, I'm not thinking about just hunting there tomorrow. I'm thinking about where are we going to hunt the next day and the next day and the next day. And I was talking about that, we're going to actually film a couple episodes over the next few years. Kind of, it's based on that. It's what we do. And I don't know if you follow turkey hunters at all.
I'm not a turkey hunter. I was told that's
Not a turkey
addicting,
hunter.
and I don't need
Yeah,
another addiction.
yeah. So it is, but so Culpepper does this deal, why he did what he did.
Oh yeah.
And after the hunt, he kind of goes through and he says, "This is why this is why he did what he did." We're gonna kind of not copy that, but kind of go along them same pretenses, and it's what we do. The RNT version, it's what we do and why we did it. So kind of break down the scout. So looking at a field, what we're looking at, why we're looking at this field, and what's option 1, 2, and 3. I always like to have more than one option, just because of weather. It could be wind, it could be multiple people have permission to hunt that piece of property. We may have to give somebody else the rights to hunt there. So where are we going, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to do? All that stuff and options. So, well, if the wind blows out of the south, that means they're going to have to come over the tree line, and it's going to be kind of funky. And it'd be better if, I'm just throwing out these hypotheticals. It'd be a better field to hunt if it was a west wind, because they come off the roost and they could kind of fly in a diagonal line right straight at you and not have to circle around you, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And why did we choose to set up the blinds the way we did in a certain place in the field? Why did we not hunt the middle, but we hunted just off the middle and just off the fence row? Why did we do that? Just all that kind of stuff, and kind of break down the decoy spread and why we set it up how we did and why we're trying to get them land where we are. And then at the end of it, just kind of go, okay, this is what they did. This is what we talked about. They thought they were going to do, but guess what? We learned something here, because I don't care, man. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're hunting and you didn't learn something that day, whether it was, how to make biscuits in the blind, or, geese learn, a certain note or something, but you learn something. So just talk about that and put it out there. And not every hunt is a successful hunt, but there's certain things that I look at when I look at a field, when I look at where I'm going to set up a blind, when I look at when I'm going to set up a spread, when I look at how I'm going to call at geese. There's certain things, there's a checklist, there's a mental checklist that I go through, that through years of experience, that I can hedge the bet that this is going to be more times than not a successful hunt, if that makes sense.
Okay,
So that's something
let's do your checklist, and I'll do my best to kind of ask you simple questions, because none of us are goose hunters at all, especially Canada geese. We've got specs and we'll hunt those.
It applies to any kind of animal that you hunt. And I'm a firm believer that if you're a good deer hunter, you can be a good duck hunter. And if you're a good duck hunter, you can be a good fisherman, because all it comes down to is hunting and learning your quarry, knowing what their habits are, knowing what they're predisposed to do in certain situations and certain scenarios, and putting yourself in the right position to get, in the best possible position for, making good shots, good kill, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so we've got early goose season coming up here in Arkansas. So what would be the number one, like what's my first goal? Find birds?
Location. Those are your three most important things. I've talked about this since I first got in the industry and started doing seminars. You got to be where the birds want to be. That's on the X. You got to be near where the birds want to be if you can't be on the X. And sometimes, if you can get permission on the X, you can do the other two locations for a couple of days. So, first location's on the X. Location, the second location part is somewhere near, and the third one is somewhere in between. So, somewhere near could be off to the side. Say, they're coming. Just to make this simple, say they're coming out of the east, flying straight west to the field. Well, you get a hard south wind on that thing blowing 15 to 25, you could get on the north end somewhere on that flight path and burn them down and still not waste that feed, right? So that's the second location is somewhere near, and then in between is obviously running traffic. So if you can get a couple of places locked down, the X, you stay off the roost. Obviously, that's not a good place to hunt, but somehow somebody every year finds a way to hunt the roost here in town and mess it up for everybody on opening day. But they do. Trust me, there'll be some new kid some new group of kids got a kayak down in the river and they're going to get on. It's that big bull, little bull. They're going to slide down that hill. They're going to run down there and they're going to get them one. Instead of just letting them fly out and everybody. But anyway, I digress. So it's location, location, location. The second thing is concealment, or the fourth thing actually is concealment. So if you're on the field, if you're on the X, and you just go out there and go willy-nilly and don't hide from them, guess what? You're not going to be very successful at all, because I don't care how many birds are coming. If there's 10,000 birds coming in the field, if you're not hid, they can see you. Your blinds aren't grassed in, you're pie facing, all that crap. That ain't happening. You might scratch a few out, but you're going to be wondering what the heck happened. Well, you didn't focus on concealment. That's priority. Once you're in a field, whether you're running traffic on the X, it's less important when you're running traffic because they're not conditioned to that field. They don't, they're not privy to what was in that field the night before, kind of deal. But you still need to be grassed up and look somewhat natural, and you need to avoid the pie faces sticking out of the blind.
Okay.
So after that, go ahead.
Oh, real quick, Shawn, I want to stay on concealment for a minute. We ran into an issue, which again, we hunt predominantly specs more than Canada's, but we set up we hunted a field a couple of times, and we typically hunt A-frames, which I'm assuming you do too. Number one, I want to know what's your favorite type of concealment, what type of blind you like to run, and number two, what is your take on shadows off of those blinds and how to set up?
Yep. So 100%. And this is another deal I preach constantly with setting up. And I hunt out of a tangle-free panel blind. That's my design and baby, and kind of brought it up. So that's what we hunt out of mostly. And we brush the heck out of that thing and brush the heck out of it more. We hunt with the flip tops on the top. I'm a big advocate of that, because if you're going to be out in the middle of the field, you got to have top coverage on those blinds, especially them specs and how high they come in and circle. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to cover that up. And, we've taken, there's a synthetic product out there called blind grass, blindgrass.com. I'm sure you've seen it. It looks like cattails. And we put that on the top of the lids and make them stick over the top, and then do that on the front and make it come up. Well, you can do that with natural grass, but natural grass would bend after an hour or so, and your buddy's sitting on, or sticking her arms on top of the blinds and that stuff. It'll bend it down, and then all of a sudden you see a pie face. And I've flown enough drones because I get mad. Like, if we get our butt kicked on a hunt, I want to win. So, I'm going to figure out what it is, and after the hunt, get the drone out, fly it around, see what you see in there. And most of the time you're seeing the people in the blind. Most people will blame the blinds. And sure, if you set up the blinds wrong, we'll talk about that with the shadows. But most of the time, if they're shying off the blind, it's two things. They're seeing the people in the blind, or it's a shadow. So you really need to, I tell people wear black. We don't wear black in the blind. People wearing the light colored camo and all that. But it's just like a turkey blind. When you look in a turkey blind, you want to wear black. You want to blend in the shadow. So wear black. Keep your faces down. Wear a black hat. Keep your faces down. And don't move, and have those things brushed to the gills. And you should finish them if you are also following the other rules that I always follow, or try to follow. I say always, but it's not. There's some give and take with that, for small reasons. And I can get into that later. But most of the time, I like to crosswind birds. I don't like to make them fly right into that blind. I don't want to fly right into where the boogeyman nest is. I want them to come in crosswind and slide across the decoys and then get into that hole, so they feel comfortable. Hopefully if you got realistic decoy spreads and you're calling everything, set them up right, they'll slide in that way instead of coming right at you. So I like to crosswind them. I don't like to make them fly above the blind. So make them finish at the middle of the blind, or just to the the slight downwind side of the blind. And we can adjust shooters accordingly as the day goes, you know, if the shooting's better on one end or the other. But that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is trying to finish the birds and then stringing the decoys downwind further. Because I'd rather geese land long than I would have to deal with them flaring on something. So I'd rather be comfortable in the spread and trying to land long and coax them up with the calling than I would trying to spook them. So I'll string decoys further downwind than I normally would if I was just hunting, you know, say layout blinds, something like that. The other thing is, well, two things. I don't like to have geese circle us. So that's why I kind of try to watch the wind and try to see where they're coming from and how I'm going to set up in the field, knowing that I want to set up crosswind. And I also want to have the sun hit some form or faction on the front of the blind, whether it's quartering on or straight on or dead on. I know it sucks looking into the sun, but it's still better than the birds flaring because of that shadow, because that shadow is just a black hole. Once you put sun on that grass in front of you, it makes it just flatten everything out and blend in, and it doesn't look like a giant spook box. Because although shadows are natural in nature, they get broke up by other vegetation. And we'll do things like we've got a ground stake punch, and we've got a little landscape drill. We'll cut, you know, if there's a bunch of cedars in the area. This isn't, you know, pertaining to Arkansas, but we'll cut cedars and stick them and make an island. Because let's face it, we're not trying to be invisible. We're just trying to look not like a boogeyman or not like a spook blind. And that's why we'll set up 3 sets of panel blinds pretty much every time we hunt, because it's longer. It looks less like a blind. It looks more like a fence row. So we'll do stuff like that with the blind.
Do you do that? I've got a couple questions. You said you set up facing the sun. Does the shadow that your blind casts behind you, does that bother you at all? And then number 2, go ahead.
It does bother me, but it's a lesser of two evils. I'd rather have it behind us than in front of us. And that's why I really don't want birds circling either. I want to try to put them in on that first pass. Because, yeah, I mean, the more time, I feel like a broken record when I talk about hunting and stuff, but it's just the same thing over and over in my head that I go, the more times they circle, the more chance they have of seeing the boogeyman. The more times they circle, the less they were really committed to begin with. And the harder they're going to, harder they are to shoot. So I try my best to try to get them to commit and land on that first pass.
Do you set those panel blinds up in the middle? You said sometimes you'll create an island. Do you have, yep. You'll set those panel blinds up in the middle of a field if you need to, or do you try and be near a levee or near a fence? Okay.
I prefer to be up against a levee or up against a wellhead or something like that. But we will set them up out in the middle of the field, and so I don't ever like to really set up dead nuts in the middle of the field. I kind of want to give them at least 2/3 of the field downwind and 1/3 of the field upwind, and then kind of block them with the woodliners. You want to try to keep them from behind you.
Right.
If they're going to circle, I want to keep them circling out in front. I want to keep them off that shadow. I want to keep them out. I want to give them enough room and enough space that if they are a little bit nervous, they can still circle, not see the shadow, stay out front, see decoys, and have plenty of room, out front of you downwind to be able to come in and commit.
I'm sitting here listening to this.
Like I said,
I'm sitting here listening to this. I'm like, I have no idea how we have ever killed a goose after listening to what Shawn's saying.
He's pretty much saying every mistake that we made,
exactly,
and that's why we didn't kill him.
But that just goes back to it. You can do all the wrong things in waterfowl hunting, and if it's the right conditions, they just going to come in and give it up anyway.
Yeah,
we had the right conditions.
If you see enough, if you see enough birds, if you got thousands and thousands, that's what's nice about going to Canada. And it's not that they're dumb birds. And when we go to Canada, we're not shooting. I would say 75 to 80% of the birds we're shooting are 2-year-old and plus. They're molt migrant Canada geese that spent their summer up in Hudson Bay and in tundra, and they're working back down to the golf courses and city parks where they're from. They're all the non-breeding population and all that. So that, we're not shooting stupid birds, but it's just sheer volume that some days when you make mistakes, you can work your way out of mistakes just by having sheer numbers to work with.
Yeah.
And eventually you're going to find a couple of dumb ones, you know.
Luckily those are the ones we've found lately.
We had one really good spec hunt this year, and we thought that we had it figured out after that, and we really didn't. We just had
we were just high on the horse that day. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, that's like it's cool. I'm not good at doing it. I make a lot of mental notes, and sometimes I forget about them. But it's cool to write that stuff down, like what worked today and why. Why do we think it? You know, what were the weather conditions today that were different? You know, and some days, like birds that have been in an area for any amount of time, whether it's a snow goose, a speck, a mallard, Canada goose, whatever. Once they've been in an area and they get acclimated, they know where the safe zones are. They know where the food is. They get harder to fool the longer they've been there, and you don't have a new influx of birds. When they get easier to fool is on when the wind blows hard, when you get some sleet, some ice, some snow, some they get a little hurry up in them. And they start making mistakes. That's when they get good. And honestly, we live and die as a duck hunter, as a goose hunter on the hatch. You can tell when the hatch comes out for the year, you can tell if you're going to have a good year or a tough year. And I shouldn't say a good year or a tough year. Every year's a good year, man. We should never place our happiness on the side. The piles don't make smiles. I say that all the time. It sucks. You post a picture on internet of a big kill pile, everybody, hundreds and hundreds of likes, and you post something where, oh man, something went bad and shot through pile 3, and that nobody likes it. But honestly, those aren't the hunts you learn from. It's the ones that you had to work at and try to figure out, and this silly stuff happens, and your buddy rips his waders, or just something stupid happens.
We've all got plenty of stories of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when are you headed to Canada?
A couple weeks. We'll go up there and start out. We got a house up there that we stay at, and a bunch of people up there that I've known for years. They're pretty much like family. So I'm looking forward to it.
Are you pleasure hunting or guiding? Both of those could be together. I'm not saying they have to be separate.
I do not guide at all anymore. It's two conflicting things. We're out there trying to get footage, and sometimes when you're trying to get footage, you're passing up shots that if guys are paying to hunt, you'd send it.
Gotcha.
So they're that on a paid hunt, guided hunt, those hunters are there to shoot their guns. On a film hunt, I'm not going to shoot them high. I'm not going to shoot them wide. I'm not going to shoot them out the back, because you're not going to get them on film, and it's going to look horrible. And I don't hunt that way, even if I'm buddy hunting. I just don't hunt that way. If I'm going to shoot something, if I'm going to take its life, I want to do it. I mean, it's never fair. I mean, we're not fighting a fair fight with them, but I want to do it as fair as I think I can, and I want to fool them. I like to shoot them feet down. And we don't always do that, but I mean, the majority of the time it's feet down. And if we don't, I just try to figure it out and go back at them the next day.
Do you have the cameras with you every time you go?
For a stretch there, I did. And trying to get away from that a little bit. I'm trying to line out my film days and then my fun days. And I say fun days because there's things that go on during a hunt when you're filming. It's like a circus, man. You got cameras moving and this and that, and it's just a lot of stuff going on, and you lose sight of some of the things and how some of the things that are fun about it, and also how birds really react when you're not out there trying to film a hunt and goofing around and doing stuff. So it keeps me fresh and it keeps me sharp if I can just go out and fun hunt, and ready for those days of filming, because it's work, and work sometimes isn't that much fun. And if work's not fun, then you kind of dread it after a while. So that's why I think it's important for me. And that's why I turkey hunt. That's why I fish. That's why, I try to spend a few extra days, taking my kid out when I'm home. or taking the old man out hunting and stuff like that. So yeah, I try to get out and fun hunt more now than I used to.
What kind of things have you learned as far as filming waterfowl? Because Matt over here, he has filmed, I don't know how many deer get shot, and I don't know how many big game get shot. And he's filmed waterfowl hunts too, but I think you're getting, I mean, it's your deal now.
Yeah.
Is waterfowl stuff. So
Yeah.
what are some things you've learned over
Yeah.
the years doing RNTV? And you did something, what was it called before that you did?
Well, I did the Foul Pursuit DVD
Foul Pursuit.
series.
Foul Pursuit. I didn't want to get it wrong.
Yeah,
Sorry.
before. Yeah, I did it before and in conjunction with probably the first 8 or so years of RNTV, 8 or 10 years, whatever it was. I don't know. They all run together. Waterfowl hunting, like, you probably, coming from deer, and did you do much turkey hunting or anything?
Yeah, I did it all.
Filming?
Yeah, I've field produced for
You
6
did it
years.
all?
So
Yeah. So, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but deer and turkey are so much easier to film.
oh
than
yeah.
waterfowl hunting, because the deer, it just, everything happens slower. And waterfowl is so, that deer is going to be walking down this trail, or he gobbles over here and it's going to take him 15 minutes. Sometimes he might try to circle around behind, but waterfowl it's boom, boom, boom. I mean, they come from here, they go around here, they spin, they shoot. You call the shot, the wind's blowing, they go here, this guy's shooting over here, and it's utter chaos, and trying to get on the same page. And that's why it helps. Like, we've got a core group of guys that we kind of that travel around, and we all have an equal role. I don't say anyone. I mean, I'm kind of the ringleader, but I'm not the. If push comes to shove, I'll probably have the final say in something. But the group that we have, we've evolved in such a way that we all know our roles and we all work them. And we got the blind crew and the scouting crew, and and decoys and all this and that. It just kind of gels together, and we know what we're trying to do, and we all want to finish them in a hole. We don't want to shoot them out to the left, and we don't want to shoot them out right, and that kind of stuff. So that's made it a lot easier through the years, is just having a good group of people around you that know what they're trying to do and what they're trying to capture. And I'm not saying that we do our best with RNTV to capture a hunt about 95% of the way that I would normally do a hunt if I wasn't filming. So we don't have a bunch of guys standing up shooting, with the camera and doing cutaways and do all that. We try to run 2 cameras, so we get that in the blind interaction and guys coming out organically, not fake. And and then have a guy on the the birds, and then he's also responsible for the dog and that kind of stuff. So we don't have to stop and redo this and redo that. And because to me, that's, some guys can do it. To me, I'd blow a gasket, man. I couldn't do that. It's like, hurry up, get in. If you're not capturing it the way it happened, yeah, I don't want to be a part of it.
I was gonna ask how many cameras y'all generally had on the hunt, but you said 2. So
yeah, we'll run 2, and we've started running. GoPros have made a pretty good advancement and stuff, and we run some of those. And then where applicable, the laws on drones have just keep changing and evolving. We'll use drones, but primarily those are used outside of the hunt, and some of the scouting and that kind of stuff anymore. But yeah, so we use quite a few cameras at times.
I love the camera stuff. If I'm being honest, like, that stuff really interests me. Not that I would want to do it to the level that y'all do it, but I like trying to capture. So
what do you
that
run
stuff.
for? What do you run for a camera when you're filming?
Sony DSLR.
Yeah, see, and that's awesome, but it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Like, that camera inside and out, right?
Right.
So you could probably rack focus and run manual and all that. It gets very difficult with because I probably got about 3 or 4 guys that I use throughout the year, and so sometimes we'll have the guy in the blind using the DSLR because things are going slow. But for the bird cam and it's autofocus on a regular, just like a Sony X80 or something like that. It's just the throwaway rate is a lot lower when we're doing it that way with a camcorder, and it's just, you can throw it in anybody's hands. So if we shoot out and the camera guy with birds are still coming, the camera guy can shoot. You can hand the camera off and somebody can do it. The DSLRs, like I can do it. I can film with a DSLR, and one of my other guys can, but it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point I can run it in my sleep,
waterfowl.
but it took a long time for me to get to that point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
like you said, I can't just say, "All right, Barrett, here you go. I'm going to shoot my 4 ducks real
Yeah.
quick."
And you probably got a bunch of custom settings in
Right.
there and stuff. Yeah. So you run a Sony. What do you run a Sony?
I have the A7R5 right now.
Oh.
Yep.
Dang, they're going up. I got an A7R3
Mm-hmm.
and an A7
It had
III, and I don't even know what else.
had the S3 for a long time, and that was probably my favorite camera. I just went to this R5 because it has a little bit better picture quality or more megapixels.
I've got a F-150.
No, yeah.
F-150. That's what you drive.
Matt is
F-150.
exceptionally good at what he does, so don't let him be
Yeah.
humble
Oh,
over
I
here.
believe
He's
it, yeah.
really freaking good at
No,
what
it's-
he does.
I've done it for a while.
It's tough. Yeah.
I actually
Yeah,
almost
it's
came
tough
in
to
second
be good
shot
at
with
the
you
DSLR.
guys a couple years ago, but I had to go on an elk hunt. I was talking to Blake and Jimbo, so
Ah.
I almost got to come to Missouri.
Dadgummit.
Yeah,
Oh man,
Well, hell.
Missouri is in like
Well,
Habitat
shoot.
Flats.
yeah.
Oh gosh.
It was a big elk.
Oh.
So on pictures and stuff and social media now, what do you look for in a good, I would say, social media post? Because me personally, I want to see a picture that captures the experience. Everybody's posted a pile pic. A pile pic is the same every single time. It's just different people, different birds. But I like to see
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. I like to see the experience. That's what I want to see. When we first started the podcast, one of the guys, Caleb, took a picture of Barrett, and he's holding his gun, but he's just like big laughing. Okay. And you can there's no birds in the picture, but you can tell from that picture there's a good time being had. There's something funny that happened, and this is a good moment. And those are the kind of pictures that I really like to see.
Man, you're asking the wrong person, because this is the honest to God truth. Everything that I post that I drag my feet on and say, "Oh, that's stupid. Nobody will like that." That's the one people like the most. And the ones that I think, "Oh my gosh, people are going to really like that. That'd be awesome." I put it up and like, bomb. So yeah, I can't get it.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you like to see? In your opinion, what's going to give you to hit the like button?
I like to see lifestyle stuff, like you said. I like to see birds in action. I like to see reels. Actually, I like to watch reels. Just good dog work, good close-ups of birds reacting, that kind of stuff is my personal preference. But like I said, I must be a weirdo because not everybody likes the stuff I like. So
I'm glad you brought up the dog, because
don't answer that. That wasn't a question. Don't answer that.
I'm glad you brought up the dog, though, because that was something that I was going to talk to you about, because you're a big dog guy, and we didn't get into the importance of a dog on a hunt. So I want you to dive into that a little bit.
Holy cow! Yep, you're gonna label me as a dog lover. I know it. Everybody's gonna get me now. I honestly, like, I went for a time there. So back, I can't remember how many years ago. It was a long time ago. I worked for Avery Outdoors, and I had to go down there to Memphis like the week before the duck opener up here. And at the time, I was working for Avery, and I could guide at this. It was a private duck club, members only, here by the house, and there were 6 members. Each member had their own guide. They called him a punter, because back in the day, they would actually take them out in a punt boat, and so that each member had his own guide, and that guide would have a dog. And I was on my way back from Memphis, and I got that dreaded phone call that, "Hey, your dog ran away."
Oh,
Okay.
no.
That's not good. Find him. Well, I got home late that night, and I had the guide that next day, and he still was not home. So I got to go through that hunt, and we found him that Tuesday night. Some kid found him like about an hour away. Well, he picked him up not far from the house here, but he took him about an hour away, and he took him hunting. Dog didn't know his name, but he took him out. Took him out on opening day, and a couple other days. He said, "Man, he just sit right there beside me. I told him, fetch him up, boy." They go get him. But
he found your dog and then hunted him.
Yeah, found my dog and took him hunting.
Oh my gosh! I don't know whether to be mad about the situation or happy you got the dog back.
Yeah. Well, the funny part was he had. So I went and picked him up. So we're getting off topic here.
No, you're good.
Go for it.
Because I'll forget where I'm going. But so the funny part was, I took and I went, and it's totally illegal. I printed up flyers and put them in every stinking mailbox within a mile radius of my house. I put them in all the restaurants in town. And on Tuesday night, so I guided at this club on Saturdays and Wednesdays. That's the only 2 days they hunt. So Tuesday night, it's about 9 o'clock. I get this phone call, and he says, yeah, I'm calling about a dog. And I'm like, you found him? He's like, well, you'll have to describe him. And I, there was a couple of distinct features he had. He had some gray hairs on his tail and whatnot. And I told the kid, I said, he's like, I said, is that him? He's like, he kind of hesitated. He's like, yeah, that's him.
Oh, he was so disappointed.
Oh,
describe the dog. He sits really well and fetches up ducks when you tell him to. That's him.
His dad saw the thing, and turns out the dog had left here, and he ran a mile up to the main road to the highway, and there's a sporting goods store over there, or was at the time. He crossed the highway. He was over there because the sporting goods guy told me he had seen him. So that made me worried. So I was checking all the ditches around there, trying to figure out, So he ran up that way. Then he ran a mile the other way down a dirt road and turned the corner and then went down to the dam and was down there. Guys were down there salmon fishing. Well, this kid was down there salmon fishing, and Deuce went down there sitting on a rock next to him salmon fishing. So he didn't know the owner, so he just took him home. So that's how he took him hunting, on opening day. So anyway, he didn't want to give him back. So I brought him home that night. And when I brought him home from running the roads, he had wore the pads off his feet, and he had these blue gauze that wrap, that wrap that sticks, sticky wrap stuff. He had that all over his feet. That's what he took him hunting in. Tore up his pads. So
this was Deuce.
I ended up. Yeah, this was Deuce.
Really?
So I ended up taking. Yeah, it was a bad deal. Or it was good. Turned out to be a really good deal. But when he ran away, I didn't think I was ever going to see him again. But so I ended up taking the kid and his dad. I took him pheasant hunting over Deuce, and I got him a bunch. I worked at Avery, and I got him a bunch of stuff and some decoys, and I got him call and whatnot. Thanked him. Took him pheasant hunting. There's a European pheasant hunt over here where they release birds, and so we went over there after did one of their hunts, and we shot like a dozen pheasants over them, and Deuce is out there catching them out of the air and doing stuff. But, in the end, it taught this kid, the kid, he's like, man, I'd have never known that dog was capable of doing that. And he says, you know what? I want a puppy now. So, that got to, the kid ended up getting a puppy and going from there. But,
wow.
But circling back with all that, I was very fortunate to get him back, but, circling back to all that, I learned in that one hunting that river marsh, that it really sucks to not have a good dog. I mean, it really sucks. You knee-deep mud, but the water's only up to your thighs kind of deal, trying to chase cripples around. And so I think dogs they can make or break a hunt. There's nothing worse than a bad dog on a good hunt. Causing chaos, and it's a good way to not, get invited back if you bring an unruly dog. But a well-trained dog, they're so much fun, and they're just like Carl today. He's a member of our goose crew. I mean, he's as important. His job is as important as the guys that brush the blinds, that set the blinds, that put the decoys out, to do the scouting, because he's got his role and his job, and that's what he does. And we don't use a dog to pick up every bird in the spread. It's so much faster that, so typically what'll happen is we'll get a group of birds come in, boom, 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 shoot them, high five, da, 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 da. all right, send a dog. Boom. He goes out, picks one up out of the spread. Or if a lot of times the older they get, they just learn this. They see them long birds sail, and I could just let him. I just look over and I know he's got it. Say his name, and boom, he runs through. He got 5 or 6 of them flopping. He runs right directly by him. Boom, zooms out there 200 yards, picks up that bird. And if he doesn't, I just let him pick up a close one, bring him back, line him up on that long bird, send him out there 2, 3, 4, 6, as far as you can see him. Pick up that bird. As soon as he gets in his mouth, everybody jumps out of the blind, grabs the bird, boom, right back in. It's just faster, goes a lot better that way. But and then water, they're invaluable in water. Just trying to get cripples and stuff up in the brush and that kind of stuff, digging birds out that you'll never find. They always talk about how great of a conservation tool a well-trained dog is, and there's nothing further than truth on that one. Because Deuce, Trace, Carl, they found birds that Emma, or that other dog I hunted with for a while, they'd find birds that they'd be lost if we didn't have a dog. So they're as important as like I said, having a call, having a gun, having your buddies with you that have their roles too. So
I'll agree 100%. And I'll tell a quick story, but we hunted a field near the Arkansas River, not far from the house. It was in Conway, kind of out near the Lolly Bottom out there. And this blind hadn't been hunted in 2 days, 3 days. It had been rested for 2 or 3 days, and so we got to come in and hunt. And so I took my dog out and we set up, and we were in the blind like getting ready to hunt, and my dog kept like looking behind, smelling something, sniffing something. And so I thought he had to pee, so I took Huck out of the blind and like, hey, go, business, whatever. And he took off down the levee where that blind was, and about 2 or 3 minutes, he came back with a bird that had been shot 3 days ago, and that they had lost. And so it's incredible how much of a difference a good dog makes.
Barrett's dog Huck is, like what you said, a part of the crew. His dog Huck is a part of the crew. Like, if we invite Barrett, we just know that Huck is coming. Like it's just a given because Huck is incredible.
But do you invite Huck and then Derek comes along?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do.
I mean, Tyler's taken Huck and I haven't gone. Yeah. So
that's how it used to be with. That's how it used to be with Deuce. Like, he would guide at that European pheasant hunt deal. And they didn't really want me. They didn't care about me. They wanted Deuce. Like, he knew the deal. He knew where you started in the pine. You go all the way through the pines. You work over to the ditch. You come back down. You go around it. He knew the whole deal. And you get to the end and like, all right, let's go again. He was autopilot. But
yeah, it's really cool because I mean, we're at a point now where Huck, I'm fine to hand him off with any of these guys and let him go hunt with them and me not even be there. So it's really really fun to have a good dog.
Oh, 100%. I remember one time, like you told that story about the 3-day-old one. We did that with Deuce one time in the fog at that hunt club or that private club deal. Had a guy out, and it was on a Wednesday. Opening day was on a Saturday. This was a couple years later, and had a wood duck come in, and it was foggy, and the member shot it and wing tipped it, sailed it like 150 yards in the fog, and he's like, "You gonna send him?" I'm like, "When I can see where it's at, I mean, I send him up there in the fog, I can't handle him, So about 45 minutes later, the weather kind of clears up a little bit. He said, "You gonna send him?" I'm like, "Yep." I get out, it's dead bird back, a couple 3 whistles, get him out there. And it went up in the cattails. We're hunting an open lily pads and running water and that kind of jazz. He gets up in there. I poke him right into the cattails where it was, and he's gone, man. He is gone for like 20 minutes. And I'm facing the other way because I had to look into the sun. The member wouldn't look into the sun, so he's watching where the dog is. He's like, "You worried? You worried?" I'm like, "Not really." He's like, "You sure? You sure?" I'm like, he's either going to go to the river. He's not going to swim the river channel. He's either going to go there, he's going to run back down this way, or we'll see him at the clubhouse. We're fine. About 20 minutes go in there, and all of a sudden he's like, "Here he comes, here he comes." And I look back, yep, he's got a bird. He gets about 5 feet away. I'm still not looking. I'm looking in towards the sun, the other direction. He's like, "He's got a mallard." He goes, "I shot a wood duck." I'm like, "Yeah, you shot a hen." He's like, "Oh my God, it's Bandit." And I'm like, "What?" I turned around. He's got this lively Drake mallard, wingtip Drake mallard with a leg band on it. Turns out the guys that hunted the blind that Saturday had crippled one and never found it. So I'm like, oh my God. He's like, he gets that band. He gets that band. He deserves it. Da 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 da. I was like, all right. He says, what about that? What about that hen wood duck? I'm like, oh man, he is not going to let up on this thing. So I sent him back in there. 5 minutes later, he comes back with that stinking hen wood duck.
Unbelievable.
I was like, happy damn.
That's a great story.
And then we hunted that same area about 50 yards away, and I had 2 members that day because we didn't have enough guides. And on the way out, they joked about it. They says, hey, has your dog ever caught a duck in the dark? I said, nope. And about 5 minutes later, I'm putting decoys out. They're like, hey, remember you said your dog never found a duck in the dark? Yeah. So he's got one now. It's like, oh, man. Yeah. That's one for my lanyard. Yep.
So, I could sit here and tell dog stories all day.
I got a million stories of that dog, man, like down there in Dexter. What's that? Dexter, Missouri. What's that? Otter Slough. So we were hunting next to Otter Slough on private ground in Rice, but we were hunting right along that levee in these like layout boats. We actually got this on film on I think it was one of my fall pursuit deals. We shot a bird, so we're facing out into the field, and we shot a bird, and it sailed about 150 yards down at treetop height into the woods. And I'm actually filming this hunt, and my dog trainer's running the dog, and I seen Deuce. He's looking. I'm like, he marked. He knows where it is. He says, what do I do? I said, send him. He runs down the levee, 150 yards down the levee, and then turns left into the woods. He's gone for 15 minutes into the actual public area. And here he comes back with that damn pintail in his mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
And how they do that, but he just knew, run down to where it went in the woods, turn left, and he's in there. But
you think Hank would have done that?
Do some.
No.
What's that?
Nothing.
He probably would have.
I had a Boykin Spaniel named Hank, and he had a Boykin Spaniel named Hank, and he was good at. He was good at peeing.
He was good at peing on stuff.
Chewing blinds up.
That's
good at
about
that.
it.
Be good at something.
Yeah.
He was.
Hey man, sometimes I think the smartest dogs are the ones that never get off the couch, because if you shot that damn duck, you go get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
No, he wouldn't sit on the couch. It was my fault. I tried to train him. I did a bad job. I'll take the blame. But he was so wired, like when we went out there, he would get excited because he knew what we were doing, but he could not tone it down.
Uh-huh.
He couldn't pull it back down. So it was just like he was just amped the whole time. It was,
we'd be working
bad.
a group of ducks, and Forrest would have that dog in a headlock over.
Yeah, they would wrestle in a blind.
I did.
Trying to get him to chill out.
I sure did.
Chokehold coming off the top rope.
Little 40-pound Boykin.
He's all you can handle, huh?
He was whooping Forrest in the end of a blind.
I had him tied to the blind, and I had my hand around his neck. At one point, we were trying to work some birds, and I was just trying to hold him, just like, be quiet.
We were all laughing. We had
birds.
birds working, and we're laughing because Forrest is down there wrestling while we're trying to shoot these birds that are working over the top.
And he's pretty much just whining and vibrating pretty much the whole time.
That's funny. But, you got to start out with a decent dog, but the more you hunt them, the more field savvy they get and know what to. Some of them dogs, like Jimbo's old dog, Katie, when he hunted the creek, man, she just knew where the cripples went. Didn't matter where they landed. She knew where they went, and she'd come back with them birds that no other dogs could get, just because she knew from seasoned vet, from hunting 60 days a year. And that's her Deuce, man. He hunted, he would probably do 16,000 pheasant European hunts a year for 7 years probably of his life, and then plus hunting 80 to 100 days a year out waterfowl hunting,
Good grief.
So he had the experience of getting out. Plus he was calm enough to be able to handle it too, and not be out of control.
Are you a big believer in American lab versus British lab, or does that matter to you?
I'm a good believer in just getting a good dog out of good bloodlines.
Yeah.
The whole American British thing, that's a marketing thing. More on the British side than American. Mostly, it's a marketing thing, and more power to them. They get a lot of money out of dogs with not as near as much accolades as say a dog like Carl has. more power to them. But it's just about finding the right dog for the right person. And for me, I've always had either a backyard buck and Sioux. That was Deuce. He was backyard buck, bred backyard Sioux basically. And he was probably one of my best dogs. And then, I've had a couple of field trial line dogs. Carl's a field champion. Actually, he's out of his pedigree stacked. But it's just about finding a well-bred dog out of parents that you see and know. And it's still a crapshoot. They could turn into straight up lunatics out of some of the things, but and that's kind of a misnomer about field trial dogs too. So I started out running hunt tests with Deuce, me and a buddy. He had a female and I had Deuce, and we go to these hunt tests and these wild, crazy dogs snorting fire, kicking dirt, wouldn't sit down on the marks, creeping out. And all the gallery would say is, "Oh, that dog ought to be running field trials. That dog ought to be running field trials." Well, I'm going to tell you this. I got into the field trial games after I ran hunt tests for a little while, and there could be nothing further from the truth. That dog at them hunt tests, that fire breather that's kicking dirt and doing all that, I promise you he's not going to be very good at field trials. And there may be some field trial dogs that are like that, but they are on the extreme end of the pendulum as far as that goes. Most of them are kind of like, I describe them as like a good diesel truck. They're not a Maserati. They're a good diesel truck. They idle, they sit there, they're ready, they got good low end torque, and they're going to go a million miles. And they got a good field trial dog's got to be able to sit there, and they got to watch birds. They got to pay attention. They got to have a good memory, good eyes, a good nose, and they got to run straight. They got to be well trained, because some of them, like them 4 series and some of them opens, they may take 20 to 30 minutes. There may be 4 birds out there that are between 200 and 450, 500 yards. And there's some big swims, that you got to go in and out of water and do stuff. So, that's, the last 2 dogs that I have are out of those lines. And that's not necessarily for everybody. And I hear people say, I don't need one of them field trial dogs. I don't need one of them field trial dogs. Well, I promise you, if you had one, you'd want another one. Mm-hmm. Because I don't need one to be able to go out and win an open. But what I need is one that's trained to that level, because the level, how they train those dogs and how specific they are throughout the training curriculum, and how finite and how refined they are at doing things. And they put these tools in with the collar and yard work and getting in the water and running straight and doing all this stuff and be able to handle at extreme distances. So when I ran hunt tests, I didn't know any better. So in HRC finish, you got to run a 40-yard blind. It might be different now, but you run a 40-yard blind. Well, guess what we did? We taught our dog how to run a 40-yard blind. And then the next step up was finished. We got to run 100, 125-yard blind. So then you're out there trying to hack these out. Well, in a field trial dogs, you never teach them to run a 40-yard blind. You teach them to run at the end of the field, because they don't learn to handle and change directions in 40 yards. You're not teaching them anything about a blind in 40 yards. Mm-hmm. You're teaching it when they got to go. You put your hand down, you say dead bird back. That means you go where you're pointed until I tell you to go somewhere else. And that's the level of detail that they put into these dogs. And once I've had it, that's what I want. That's what I expect out of a dog from here on out. Not one that I got to blow 30 whistles and throw 3 rocks and 4 empty shells to get a bird that I probably could have walked out to faster than they got it,
Forrest carries rocks in his pocket with him.
There's a blind bag in that closet right there. It's got rocks in it right now.
Hey, now down in Louisiana, they call them rock dogs. They call them rock dogs.
Oh, rock dog.
or mud. Oh, rock dogs, or mud boat ornaments, or rock dogs. Yeah.
Mud boat ornaments.
Yeah.
Rocks don't work the same way in a goose field as they do out in the water.
Oh no.
You got to throw bigger rocks.
Well,
yeah.
I
hope you don't hit them in the head.
Yeah.
I don't want to use too much of your time up. We do have one more question for you.
I've got a few more.
Oh,
so,
go ahead.
Shawn, are you coming to?
Heck, we ain't been on that long.
Yeah, I know. Are you coming to Arkansas to hunt this year? I'm assuming so.
I will at some point. I don't have any specific dates or anything. I will at some point. I always try to make it down there. And we've always had a long-standing tradition. I'd come down and hunt with John like the last weekend of the season. I always particularly enjoy it. He hates when I come down there at the end because it's all the ducks are paired up and it's just the hunting sucks and all that. But to me, I'm already wrapped up on my goose hunting and filming and doing all that stuff. For me, that's just more of a fun deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun to come down there and see it, hear it, and do all that. And honestly, like the last week of the season with him, it's you hunt a spot. They got all their spots on rotation. You go in there and you pull all the decoys out, pull the dog stands out, all that stuff. I think that's fun. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, tearing it all down.
Just the process or the end of the process, really.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, hey man, we ran this race all year. It's the finish line. Let's cross it together, kind of deal.
I agree with you. I think that's something I love about it.
Yeah. And honestly, by the end of January, I'm pretty well done waterfowl hunting. It's time. I mean, my waistline's already gained about 2 inches. It's time to get back get off the feed bag and start getting back in shape.
Get ready for turkeys
stuff
then.
Together and get ready and fishing. Yep.
So, for a man that hunts as much as you do, and coming into Arkansas, what do you, for specifically this season, what are you looking forward to?
Looking forward to and dreading at the same time, running the roads, man. I love getting out and meeting new people and meeting new faces and new places and getting out and seeing old friends. Like I said, I go to Manitoba. I tell people this all the time. I've seen little kids grow up to be big kids, and now they got little kids. They're like family. So that's the thing I look forward to the most is getting out on the road, seeing what I call family,
Mm-hmm.
and catching up and also meeting new people and learning new stuff, like getting different areas. I enjoy. A couple years ago, we went to New Brunswick. That was one of the coolest places that I've hunted, and I've hunted a lot of cool places. But you're hunting mountain geese basically.
Wow.
And it's a geese. You're like, where are you looking up in the sky? I don't see nothing down there. You're looking down in the back, looking down. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, that's cool.
And they got to kind of crawl up the hill at you. So
that's interesting.
That's what's cool. That's what's cool about waterfowling. You can have a lot of fun hunting around home and doing that kind of stuff, but you can also get out and run around the country and see a lot of cool stuff. And now that you're the champ, you need to go out and run the roads a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
He sure does.
Huh?
Well,
take that cut down the road, baby.
Well, what you don't know, but what all these guys know is I'm not a cut down person. That was probably the last contest I thought I would ever win was that one. But you're a world champion yourself, champ. Over there.
Whatever, champ.
Exactly. He just blowing smoke.
What, 2020?
Yeah. They call that deflection. That's what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
Deflecting. Yeah. Yeah. Embrace it. Embrace it.
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, well. Yep.
What about you? Was it easy for you when you won?
What do you mean easy?
To be like, yeah, I'm a world champ now.
No, I still, I'm no different than anybody else that picks up a shotgun and a bird whistle. So I was fortunate enough to win a few and win a couple of the right ones. And that's awesome. And if people know me for that or, whatever, and want to come up and talk about, if it helps, break the ice and talking about waterfowl, then great. But yeah, I hope it doesn't define me as who I am as a person, but it is part of what I did. So
do you miss competing at all?
Not one stinking bit whatsoever. No, I got into contest calling as a means of, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have podcasts, you didn't have social media, hell, there weren't camera phones, for crying out loud. So, you had to get out, you had to hit the roads, you had to go places and immerse yourself into this stuff outside of the city park, listening to, birds. So that's kind of what you did. And, I'm a competitive person by nature. And that was kind of a natural thing, hunting public, being competitive around public and people saying, oh, you need to call in contests, and getting in that and traveling around the country and meeting people and all that stuff. But bottom line is I like to hunt a whole lot more than I like to compete. And I'm probably a lot nicer person now that I'm not competing. When I was in competition, I just as soon punch somebody in the face. Is when I walked on that stage, I was in a different world. Like I was mad at everybody, and I was against everybody. Now in the bullpen, it was a different story, but it'd take me a minute just to calm back down, you know. So I don't miss being in that state of mind with things. But I also went through the transition period where, you know, there were a couple of upstart, you know, new call companies and splitting up off the main guy, and so there was a lot of bad blood, and you sit in a bullpen, and you couldn't talk to this person, or you're not supposed to be friends. And I'm and like, dude, I was friends with these people for so long. So contest calling to me got not fun, and I just really wanted to hunt, and that's why I never really went to the world contest either. It's always like the first weekend, second weekend in November. Well, hell, that's when everything was on back then, you know, around home. And I didn't really care to go out there, but Sean Mann talked me into going out there that the year I won it. And then I went back the next year to defend, and then I never went back out. I basically quit contest calling right after that, and just went at hunting and went at filming.
That's interesting. That's interesting. For me personally, like I love competition calling, but I will say there has been some sort of change since winning that it's kind of like, well, what now? I mean, I still want to win. There's two contests I still want to win, and I want to compete in those. But it's also, I'm kind of realizing, like, you know, that glory was for that week, and nobody's going to think about it from now on, other than me when I come up here and look at that trophy.
Well, you start looking at a couple of things. There's a lot of things that come into play with me, for particularly is that, you know, there's other mountains to climb. You know, you've done it for a while, and it's like, okay, I've won, I've been successful. You can't ever say that you're the best of all time. Maybe Tim Grounds or something. I would say, you know, goose caller, maybe not contest, but you're always just good in the moment and good at the times. But there's always be somebody else that's better or whatever. But it's all subjective to what people want to say and their personal interpretations, and that gets muddied. But you know, family gets in the way, life gets in the way, jobs get in the way. There just gets to be stuff that's more important than. I'm not saying that contest calling isn't important, because at a certain stage of a person's life, my life, whatever, it was the number one. But after, you know, I did it a while, it was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to film. I need to spend more time instead of going, you know, the year I won the world, I called in 16 contests, won 8 of them. Wow. At 16 contests, so a couple of them were double weekends, right? So, but say there's 10 weekends. That's 10 weekends a year I'm running the roads in the summertime, when I probably should be being, you know, a husband or a dad or something, doing that kind of stuff, or focusing on my career and, you know, building the DVD series and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
That makes total sense. I mean, I still, like I said, I still have unfinished business in my world. There's 2 contests that I still want to win, and that's really just for me. But it's kind of like a mental adjustment of like what's really important, you know. And I'm still ecstatic. Like I'm very happy that I won that. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm over the moon for it.
The fire definitely has to be there, and that's how I was talking to Corey Nickham about it a couple of weeks. I think it was. I don't remember if it was Rogers or at Minnesota. And you know, if the fire's not there, get out, because you're just like. So I won the world in 2000, 2001. I went to a few contests or whatever, but I never practiced, never did anything. Like I just didn't have the desire to practice, and it wasn't there. And I knew right away, it's like, all right, I'm done. After the world this year, I'm just done. And if I can walk away and I don't have the urge to do it anymore, then just keep going. And if it eats me up, then get back into it. And it never ate me up. I just found other things to do and other places to go and people to see and geese to shoot. So,
are geese still your favorite?
Man, no, not necessarily. But like, I kind of got pigeonholed into it. Like growing up, I mean, I in West Michigan, I was an opportunistic waterfowler. I was a waterfowler. Like I don't care. Like if I come to Arkansas, I'm just as happy to shoot 6 shovelers as I am 4 greenheads. I don't care. Like, it's fun to me to shoot them. I grew up shooting whatever came by, was buffalo heads, teal, whatever. I don't care. But working at Richington, you always had Jimbo and you had John. Well, I mean, I know where I rank in that totem pole. So, I mean, I just kind of got, I'm the goose guy, so that's kind of where I go at. But even when we're on the road, I mean, it's, best option. And when we're on the road, we typically don't hunt with a lot of outfitters just because I enjoy the whole process of the scouting, from putting it all together, getting permission, all that stuff. And when we do hunt with outfitters and stuff, we try to be real hands on. We don't just sit at the lodge and drink cocktails and let everybody else take care of all that stuff. We like to be in it. So and I forget where I was going with all that. I told you I walk in circles sometimes. Can't remember where I'm talking.
You're good. What was it like being around Jim and John when you started out with those guys?
Cool. Really cool, because an old buddy of mine, and some people might frown when I say Tom Matthews started Avery Outdoors. He had a saying that like finds like. And you'll notice that when I tell you this, that, people that have the same interests as you, the same values as you, same lifestyle as you all tend to gravitate towards one another, and you find each other. Like, you got friends from all over the country that are into the same stuff you are, and you just like finds like. So the same deal, man. We were traveling the country. I have my DVD series, traveling the country. We were doing a bunch of stuff for Sportsman's Warehouse, where Stu was the owner, was flying us out to all these different Sportsman's Warehouses all over across the West and Upper Midwest. We did Spokane and Idaho Falls and St. Cloud, a couple of 3 or 4 other ones. Well, John and Jimbo were on these, and I mean, I just got to know them on them things, and I knew them a little bit through when I worked with Avery, because we had a camp down there in Stuttgart, so I knew them from that, and getting to know them, and just started talking about opportunities and whatnot, and it's just one of them deals where like finds like. I think it's a cool deal. Jimbo, John, and I. Waterfowling, what we do is hard on relationships. It's hard on wives and to find, to be able to keep that through. You don't see a lot of people in the industry that have stayed in the waterfowl industry that have stayed married, at least to the same woman. And I'm proud to say, all 3 of us have, and that's just one thing we have in common. We're family people, fear God, and love the outdoors, and love the passion for the sport from its, truest sense. And that's why we try to teach people about the history and bring up the past, because if you don't know your history, you don't know where you're going. And, history has a tendency to repeat itself. And, some of the pitfalls that, that happen along the way, if you know what history is, you can try to avoid some of that stuff. So does that kind of answer your question about working with them?
Yeah. No,
it's been fun. It's been fun. Both, great dudes. I mean, Jimbo's not there anymore. And but I still talk about him like he's there, because I still consider, him family, him, Rich and Tone family, him and his family is part of the Rich and Tone family still. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I feel the same way. Like the group of guys that, that I'm hanging out with here tonight, like none of us grew up together. None of us grew up close to each other or anything like that. But like you said, like finds like, and I mean,
Yep.
we talk every day pretty much. And a lot of the times it's not even about waterfowl. I mean, it's about something else, or we just joke with each other during the day we need to lighten the mood at some point in our day, and so we'll talk to each other. But no,
that's, it was funny is like I talked to the people I grew up with and went to high school with. I talk to far less than the people. I know more about what's going on in Stuttgart than I know what's going on 10 miles from where I live right now. And I know, I know, and it's what's going on with my extended family in Manitoba more than I know what's going on with some of the people that are kin to me, just because I said like finds like, and we gravitate in the same morals, and I got family that doesn't, has the same morals. Let's just say that is what I have, so I don't, so so it's just like finds like.
We're gonna call this episode "Life Lessons with ShawnStahl."
Shawn, so
I don't know about that. But
Shawn, with traveling as much as you've done,
don't follow me.
Shawn, traveling as much as you've done over the years and talking about those relationships, do you have one that's a little bit more special to you, or that you have circled on the calendar every year that you like to go to?
100%, man, and that's Goose Camp in Manitoba. That we've become very close to a Hutterite colony up there, and there's 25 families, and they're just like like kin to me. I mean, my last name's Stahl, and that's Stahl is a pretty it's not a popular name, but a known name in their religion and stuff. So, got that in common with them. Good friends, I consider them like family. And then several other landowners around the area, same deal. I've known them forever, and I really look forward to going up there. And that's, man, when COVID hit a couple years ago, it didn't suck that we couldn't go there and shoot birds, because honestly, the hunting is not that great there. We can make do with what we need to do for filming wise, and it works out great. But it's just the fact that we couldn't see the people. We can still talk to them on the phone, but that's not the same, man. That's not like, you can't give them a hug and tell them, see how the kids are growing up and whatnot. You can't. That's just stuff you can't do. Even on FaceTime, it's hard to do.
Yeah, there's something.
That's the one trip that I circle every year.
There's something special to be said about when you get to go visit people that you plan to see every year and get to sit at a table with them and share a meal and actually truly fellowship with the people you enjoy being around.
Oh, 100%, man. We have dinner with them every night. It that when COVID hit, we couldn't cross the border. That sucked, man. That was a right there. But and then now they got that deal where you got to draw to get in there, and we're only allowed to go 7 days. We didn't go, like, we would only hunt like 8 to 10 days really when we were there. But I'd always, I'll go a couple days early or stay a day late kind of deal. But now they're kind of cutting us short to 7 days of hunting, and we're probably going to take off from there and go to Saskatchewan. So that kind of shortened our trip up a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
Shawn, are you paying attention? Are you paying attention to what's going on? Do you see any or foresee any upcoming issues with what government's talking about lockdown now in Canada, or have you been paying attention to any of that?
Man, I've heard rumblings and rumors, and I hope it's not true. I can't control it. All I can do is react to it. So, I mean, I'm not gonna worry myself over it till it happens, and we'll figure out what to do. But it will suck if they do it. And again, not from the standpoint of, the hunting, like I said, isn't the first part of it.
Yeah. Well, I was asking more or less just because we're planning on going to Canada as well, and I didn't know if maybe some of your connections and people that you stay in touch with up there, if they've given you any feedback or news, because we're kind of constantly daily watching to see what happens to.
I don't know. I know it will suck if it does.
Yeah,
it's just less and less opportunities, man. It's the way waterfowl is going, and you put COVID in there, it makes it even worse.
Yeah. For sure.
That's your question. You ask your question.
Well, Shawn, we like to end, and one of my favorite things to ask, which you've done so much, but if you're sitting at Goose Camp in Manitoba, or you're sitting in Stuttgart with your buddies and you're sitting around that fire, what is when everybody's telling stories, do you have a go-to one story that stands out that, like, this is my go-to story to tell, whether it's hunting or life or whatever it's related to? We want to hear the ShawnStahl story that gets told around the fire.
Man, I'm more of a listener and a joker than a storyteller. Yeah, I more listen, and there isn't so much stories getting told. Phil tells most of the stories, and then most of us are just jaw jacking each other back and forth. So it ain't so much a story. It's just sitting around the campfire, drinking a couple beers, and planning out the next day. That's really it for me, honestly.
Okay.
Oh, come on. You got some story that you want to tell.
Not one not really. No. I mean, we just shoot from the hip on them.
It's
Talk
hard to
about
top a
old
kid
times a lot.
stealing your dog and hunting him.
That,
the next
Yeah.
day.
that's
That was a
very
pretty good
true.
story.
That was a really good story.
No, they're kind of free flowing. I don't really have any go-tos. I really.
Well, we'll have you on again, and we'll give you more preparation. Usually, I will message the person that we're going to interview and have them ahead of time. And I forgot to message Shawn and tell him, "Hey, have a story ready."
Preparation. That sounds like a medicine.
It's close. It's close.
Well, Shawn, for people that which I'm assuming most people know who you are, but where can we find you? Are you on social media and places to look you up?
Yeah, I am. I'm kind of a social media hermit in the off season though, but
That's probably a good thing.
I am. Yeah, I mean, I just like to take my I don't know, like my kid, man. Like from the time he turned 13, when you first get on Facebook, my wife's like, "So you can get a Facebook account?" He's like, "No." She's like, "Why not?" He's like, "Why do I want anybody knowing my business?"
Exactly.
And I mean,
raised your kid right.
It's kind of that's kind of it. I mean, he's still to this day. He doesn't. I mean, he doesn't really. He's really on any of it, you know.
Good for him.
But he's 21 now. But yeah, so I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram, and I TikTok, all that stuff. And I get pretty active coming up here when a lot of things are going on, and I try to be really good at if people hit me up with a message or comments, concerns, and listen to this or how's this sound. I try to get back to them, man, as quick as possible. I joke around with my wife, like on my phone. So just sitting here, I've got 27 text messages, 5 emails, and 3 Snapchats, 2 on Instagram, and one on TikTok. So I will go through all this stuff. I hate having numbers on those things. My wife will have like 900 emails, and it just bugs me. I hate seeing that. So I will go through all that stuff before I go to bed tonight and respond. So
cool.
I am quick to respond on all that stuff. People got questions or anything like that. So I try to help people out, man. I knew what it was like growing up, trying to learn how to blow a goose call and not having, people to ask or being able to trust, in your contest call and people give you the right information. So I try to help people out, as honestly as I can. Yeah. I mean, I may not know it, I don't know everything, and I'm not afraid to say that either, but I'll kind of try to steer them in the right direction as best I can.
Well, I will definitely send you some videos of my goose calling just to, help you feel better and give you a few laughs.
Let's go. Hey, man. So I tell people this all the time. I blow a short reed goose call the same way I blow a cut down. The same air pressure. Same. I don't use the tip of my tongue. I don't know. Do you use the tip of your tongue in a cut down?
I do. Yes.
See, I don't. Everything's is.
I know. We talked about that, and you blew my mind with how you cut the air off for your goose calls.
Yeah. So that's if I'm duck calling with a cut down, is and when I chatter, I use the tip of my tongue. But if I'm goose calling, it's
and where are you cutting the air off at though?
Right here, like you're coughing.
See, I in my mind, I have to cut the air off with my tongue at some point. So it's like you blew my mind.
The thing with the tip of your tongue, and it's hard that I don't have a call. So if I got a million calls over here, I got to tune tomorrow. Not a million, but like 400.
Before you go to bed.
No, those tomorrow before I go to bed. But the thing with using the tip of your tongue, it's a stop. You're stopping the air. You're gating the air. So then you got to start the air back up. If you can learn to meter your air coming through your throat, where air is constantly coming through, you're just pinching it off and letting it out. You can get a lot faster with your notes. And I used to teach people that European siren with a goose call, that where you go high low high low high low high low, and it just gets you to that of constantly pushing air through the call, and you're just pinching it off with your throat. You can get really fast with it.
Interesting.
And I just started teaching myself to do that with a cut down. I'm by no means a champ like you on a cut down.
Oh gosh,
you're a champ.
But I can I can pass as somewhat presentable to the species I'm calling with it by doing it that way. But I blow, like I said, I blow a short reed goose call the same way I blow a cut down call as far as the quack cadences go. and just quacks.
So last thing, you do have your own line with Rich and Tone of
You
goose
said
calls.
You said last thing about 6 times now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're notorious for that.
We're off the X for a reason. We really don't know where we're going. We're the support
That's
group for
fine,
everybody that
man.
doesn't kill anything.
I can talk for an hour or more, but yeah. So, what was your question?
I was just gonna let you talk about your goose call line that you've got with Rich and Tone.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've designed all of the goose calls for Rich and Tone that we have on in the market right now. The G3, the G45. Boy, that's original names, right? The Micro Goose, the Micro SS, which is ShawnStahl. Boy, that's another original. I can design goose calls. Making up names is a little bit difficult for me, but
Well, I mean,
which
think
is odd
of
because
some
I
of
can-
the
I can
names
give
from Rich and
anybody-
Tone. Anyhow,
We're all
They
good
have-
at our own things.
They have the Rich and Tone original. They have the Rich and Tone short barrel, which has the short barrel.
Yeah.
The micro hen. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
Rich and
But
Tone
I
thing.
can give anybody a nick, which is funny because I can give nicknames out to people and like that. But so we come out with my actual line, and these are the calls that I didn't design just for. So the regular Rich and Tone line, we kind of try to fit niches with them. These calls I designed, this is the style of calls that I want to use personally. So we got the L train. It's small. I can tune it. I mean, it's the size of your hand, and I can tune it to be able to do anything from lessers to snow geese to giant Canada geese all in one. It's not super user friendly, but if you can operate a goose call, you can do just about anything on it. It's like taking the training wheels and the stock muffler off a bike, you know. And then we got the Branamax, which is a little deeper, fuller, more resident Canada goose, more near woodlots or echoes and stuff like that. And then we got an old style flute, which we're bringing the flute back.
Sweet.
'Cause
I
I
did
always
not know
say-
about the flute.
Well, we make them in limited supply, so they're a little hard to make. They take a long time, and Rusty probably throws about every other one of them against the wall because they're such a pain in the butt to make. But him or Coonfoot, yeah. So that's just a different style sound, and I always talk about waterfowling in general, life in general. It's waterfowling more than, but it's a revolution and not an evolution. The waterfowl get condition smart to the things that we do on a daily basis. They don't get book smart. So what they do is they forget about the stuff that was going on 10 years ago, and you can pull that old stuff out, them old school things, and get good at. These cut downs are good right now. Ducks may get onto them here in 3 or 4 years, and then you pull out your old J frame, and then boom, guess what? They're breaking their necks trying to get in a hole, right? It's kind of that way with Canada geese. It's just a different style of sound. When short reach first came out, man, they were I could call them off of people blowing them old big rivers and them old 800s and Ken Martins. I just start cracking that. I had a Tim Brown's half breed. I'd hit that thing maybe a half mile away and just. And now you go there and there's 6 kids in one group that can blow calls like that. So it's they're getting conditioned to that, and they're not reacting to that sound as well as they used to. So it's trying to pull things out and just try to be a little bit different.
I love it. We're gonna have to have you back on again at some point, probably after season. We'll talk. We'll talk about how your season was, but we really don't want to take up all your time. Y'all are
That's
looking at me
alright.
funny, like y'all.
No.
I'm just waiting if you had another last thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was waiting for
Edge of
one
my
last
seat.
thing.
I can. Do you want me to have enough? Sean, we
They're
really
looking at
appreciate
you like
it.
you the champ. They're looking at you like you the champ.
Gosh.
We do look like
Yeah,
we
you
look
need
at
to
him all the
go
time like
now.
that.
We're done. Sean,
All right.
really, for real,
Okay,
really appreciate it. You've got a wealth of knowledge as far as waterfowl goes, as for sure. But I've learned a lot from you over the years just through that, and it's an honor to get to talk to you and interview you for Off the X through Zoom. Really appreciate you coming on.
We've all learned something tonight, and I really appreciate it.
Well, cool. I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's a ball. I love
Barrett, you're-
talking about this kind of stuff with people that are passionate.
Yeah.
Huh?
You're usually the one that says the closing out. So
Oh,
I don't remember what it is.
no, nothing special. Sean, man, we like you said, we appreciate you. We wish you luck this season, and we'll catch back up with you hopefully during season and during your season, and see how everything's going and how successful you are.
Cool.
All right, later,
Cool.
man.